Hello, welcome back to From Soft Serve. We are in the Nightmare Frontier in the Bloodborne Remaster Project mod thing. The grass is being a little kind of goofy there. But this is kind of going to be a shorter video. I say that and it'll be 18,000 minutes long. But really it's about the attention to detail. It's small things I've noticed when I'm working on the maps. And so today, the thing you'll notice is these little candle things that are in the Nightmare Frontier. They're kind of all over the Nightmare Frontier. You can't destroy them. And so I had an idea. And so let's kind of walk through here. And you'll see, yep, there's another one. There's another one. And you'll notice that there's really no illumination coming off them. Like, they're lit, but that's it. There's no actual, light coming off them. And so you'll notice in the sunlight it's not very noticeable, right? Because, there's already sunlight hitting it. But like here, you'll notice it's just there's no real light. It's just the texture that's on the actual candles, and that's it. And then you have the particle effect playing. Or really, it's probably just like an alpha texture. I don't know, yeah, because I don't think it's an actual particle effect. But anyway, yeah, there's nothing really going on with it. And it was a small thing where I was like, okay. I've noticed a couple different instances on different maps too, where there were things that seemingly should be lit in some way. And so, oh, dude, this guy creeps me out oh my God, dude, you're crazy. You're insane. Okay, so I think you get a good sense of what they look like prior. You can kind of see them here. See, this one has an illumination coming off of it. The actual little lantern being held here. That has a lot of the particle effects, or like SFX files, they have a point light that's actually baked into them. So it's not placed through the MSB file or externally at all. It's basically just inside the SFX file itself. And so for these little candle objects, they did not receive any sort of built-in point light. And so let's pick a good one. I think this one back here is pretty good. So you can see it's not, there's no light coming off of it. And let's quit out. And what I will do, because we're on display capture here, I will pop in my modified btl.dcx file for the Nightmare Frontier specifically. And I will show you after this how I did it. I'm not completely done with the Nightmare Frontier yet, but I'll show you how you place those point lights. It's actually very easy. And so I believe we copied the new one. Fingers crossed. It should now update. And would you look at that? With the point lights that I've placed, you now actually have illumination coming off the candles. So this is what you would have seen in the thumbnail. I believe this is what I chose for the thumbnail. We'll find out. So in the sunlight ones, you can tell it's less obvious. There still is some illumination coming off of it, because of course there is a point light there, but the sun's already kind of hitting it, right? Or whatever the fuck we would call the lighting here in a fucking nightmare, but presumably sun-ish. But yeah, now you get this nice little orangish light that's coming off the candles. It's such a small little thing, and it's kind of laborious to place it on every single one, because you have to manually move it. Now, the nice thing about the Nightmare Frontier is there's only one state for the Nightmare Frontier. So they don't have a different version for after you kill Rom or after you kill Vicar Amelia, or the default one. So the nice thing is you don't have to place 3 point lights in every single spot. In Yahar'gul, there's 3 different versions of Yahar'gul in terms of the sky, and so you actually have to place 3 point lights in every single spot. And they're in different BTL files. BTL, I think the BTL 0, 1, and 2, or is it 1, 2, and 3? I don't know. Yeah, so you see just a nice little bit of light on each little thing. It's super nice. It's just a tiny little thing that I thought, okay. And of course, I'm sure someone would ask, rightfully so, are there performance concerns of adding a whole bunch of new point lights where they were not there prior? And it's like, well, technically, I'd probably a little bit, but Bloodborne actually has, and I can show this in Central Yarnum. Oh yeah, and so yeah, I had to kind of fly around the map and try to find all the different ones, and now they have little point lights. Oh, this little bitch ass. You're disgusting. Oh wow, I one-shot you? Oh, that's sad for you. So we got that. Got that one. Oh, hey, don't throw a boulder at me. That's mean, actually. So if we go to Hunter's Mark, first I'm going to show you why the performance concerns are not super serious to me in terms of this. And for that, we have to go back to Central Yarnum, the first area after the sick room, because I'll show you how they handle point lights. It already has an optimization part of it, essentially. Actually, the funny thing is I could add point lights to these candles on the tombs. I think they already have one for like the goofy ghost looking guys. Oh. Alright, well, we had a little vertex explosion there. So we're just going to quit out and essentially do the turn it off and turn it on again, which works surprisingly well. Alright, so as you can see from here, at the distance that we're at, they are rendering these point lights, but they're not rendering these. And so the game already has built-in distance. Yeah, see, now you can start seeing it's rendering that one. And so they already have a, oh. Okay, well, that's not cool. Damn. Oh, well, it's not perfect. Damn. Okay, well, let's try that again. Let's load that up again. That's still happening occasionally where it will just start crashing on certain hits, even though I was just in the other area hitting enemies and it was fine. So why is it that that enemy hits me and it causes a crash? I have no idea. No earthly idea. But yeah, essentially you can see that it fades in and out the point lights. Yeah, here you can see as we walk backward, it will slowly coal that point light in the distance there. And then as we walk closer, it will bring that point light back. And it kind of does it in a gradual-ish nature, where it kind of just fades in, and it's not rendering the other ones. I haven't found the control specifically for rendering them out just a little bit farther, specifically for this use case, where there's now a couple that it's not rendering, and that can look kind of weird, right? So that I'm looking into. I also think this lantern here doesn't have any illumination tied to it, or at least not any significant. So I might add it to lanterns like this and different things like that. So that's kind of the attention to detail. So now we can go into the actual smith box here, and this is the start of the Nightmare Frontier level. And you can see every one of these orbs is a point light that I've placed. And so obviously you can see there's controls for diffuse color. I had to turn down the radius, there's sharpness, light cutoff. There's so many different things. I did not make them shadow casting, as that is really how you can destroy performance if you want to make them shadow casting. Now necessarily, or what you could necessarily do is make them shadow casting only for the player. And so it's only really when the player walks by that it's going to render that shadow. And therefore you can mitigate a lot of the performance concerns. But I think because the point light is so small, I don't think that's worth it. And so that's kind of one of those considerations you have to make of like, So yeah, you can see I kind of went through here. And when you place a point light, you can basically use the controls here. And they have like this one where you can freely move them. And the goal is you kind of want to make it just kind of enough over it to give a nice illumination. And the nice thing about Bloodborne and, DS2, Bloodborne, DS3, all of them and onward, this is how they're represented in an actual sphere showing the different size. And so I actually copied this point light this big fat one here, which you can see obviously by the bigger sphere. Or maybe oh no, I think I copied this one. Yeah, and basically I copied that one, and then I just made it into my own little one and rotated it so it was easier to place. And then I went through the map here, and you can see bump, 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 bump. And there's definitely some I missed, as I don't think I've gone up here as much. But yeah, there's a nice, physical representation for them. And I basically just went and, yeah, did a little dot on each one. There's that one, which is a blue point light that's inside here. Is there a good reasoning for this? Or no, oh, that's still an orange one. No, there's a lot of point lights that don't technically have like an actual like physical basis for them. But I'm not adjusting that, as that is how the base game looked. So I'm just trying to add to the aesthetic without drastically altering it, which is why I've said on Twitter, but I'm not sure I've said in the video, I will offer a separate download for this mod, which puts back all of the baked lighting. So you still get to have the benefit of the dynamic shadows. You just don't get to see them as much. But for those people who would like the most strict to the original visuals, there will be an option for that, for the original baked lighting, instead of the case-by-case basis I'm currently doing, where I'm removing the baked lighting in certain maps versus others, where sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm definitely doing it on a case-by-case basis. You can see this is where I had to place most of the point lights. On the way to Amygdala, there was an absolute shitload. And so I had to place each one and go, whoop, and then that one's higher, and then, okay, we're good. It was a bit much, and I don't think I hadn't looked in here yet, in Amygdala's, but I'm assuming there's some in this room. Ooh, maybe not. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I got lucky. And so, yeah, you never know. But, yeah, this is basically something I want to do for other maps. While we're here, we will load up Yahar'gul, because I can't remember if I've said this on video or shown this. So if I have, well, you're getting a little bit of repeat here. I think I've only said it on stream barely, and then on Twitter. But there was something I noticed in Yahar'gul, where you can actually see on the streets here, there's these street lamps, right? Or street lights, or whatever you want to call them. And I noticed that while not all of them are lit with, like, the actual light bulbs being lit, most of them were. But what I found particularly interesting is that you can see, obviously, the big spheres here. This is after I went through and I added point lights to all of the ones that didn't, but were lit in game. And that's what I found interesting. I hadn't noticed it before. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting why they would use some point lights on some of them for illumination from the lamp. Because I was like, well, it doesn't seem like illumination coming from something else, or meant to be for something else. It seemed very much tied to the lamp. So I was like, well, shit, okay, I'll copy the point lights. But you can see here in Yahar'gul, as I was talking about earlier, under lights, you can see they have, oh yeah, so it is 0, 1, and 2. They have different BTL files, which store all the point lights and control them for the different time states that you can have in the game, of like before Amelia, after Amelia, and then after Rom, I believe. Correct me in the comments if those are the game state change events. But basically you copy and you just make sure that you have one in each of these specific spots, because they all seem identical from what I can tell. It seemed like they needed to do that versus just having one BTL that was shared between them. I'm assuming there was a functional reason as to why they had to do that. And one of the cooler ones was actually this lamp here. It actually created a point light, or created illumination on this broken wagon carriage looking thing. And it looks really cool in game. And yeah, I just had noticed that the street lamps, and I had not gotten to this spot yet. I had basically gotten here where I put, one here and one here. And then I'm going to go back in game and double check which ones are lit and which ones are not. Because right here you can't tell. Now in DS3, it was fairly easy to tell which ones were activated by a certain. Okay, so this one has Resident FX Param 2801. Oh, okay, so we might be able to tell here. Yeah. Oh, I just figured it out. Well, look at that. So it is like DS3, and that you can see this lamp here, the Resident FX param, is set to -1, while this one is set to 28010. And so this one is going to be lit in game with little lantern lights, and this one will not. Okay, well that makes it easier for me. I had just not looked hard enough at this to see which ones are lit, which ones are not. So now I don't need to go in game to see which ones are and which ones aren't. The other thing I could technically do is, now that I know that, I can actually light these if I wanted to. I could change the Resident FX param here to the same one, and I could light the other lanterns. However, I don't think that's necessary. Let me know in the comments. I would assume in this case that there's a reason why some certain ones are not lit as an artistic choice, as not all street lamps last forever. So presumably in this case, they chose to have some lit and some not, and so I'll respect that. You know, that's always a case like when it was Dark Souls 1 modding. You do have to choose between, because all you can do is look at the information that we have here. So it's kind of like, I wouldn't say it's like going through a crime scene, but it is kind of like an investigator where you're like, okay, so let's see if, was this an oversight? And there are instances where that's why you look and you cross-reference with a lot of the other ones. And that's why in this case, I noticed that there were point lights on certain street lamps that had, they were lit, and there were a bunch of other ones that did not. And I was like, well, okay, they both have the SFX active, so technically they should both have point lights, right? And that was in my thinking. That's kind of how I go about it, where I go, okay, is there something is that the exclusion to the rule, or is that the rule? And none of it's going to be perfect, right? If you want something 100% accurate to the original, well, then you wouldn't do that. But in this case, I feel pretty okay with, like, yeah, I think there should be point lights on the street lamps that are lit, because they already did that on some of them. They just didn't do it to all of them. And who knows why that is? It could be performance. It could be small optimizations here and there. Who knows? But luckily, I'm not bound by a platform restriction anymore. It's just PC, so I'm okay if it degrades performance a little bit. It's a point light. It's not going to be massive at all. And they're not. Now, they are shadow casting, but here's the key. As I said earlier about the Nightmare Frontier, they are shadow casting, but I have made them only shadow casting for the player. And so when the player walks by these street lamps, there will be a little shadow that's cast, but that's it. And so that performance is mitigated, or performance loss, because it's only for the player. And that's why it's really nice that you can do that. Whenever you click on something, you can actually, there's shadow source, shadow destination, and then a point light shadow source. So it's really nice that there's a toggle for point light shadow source. It's not just all or nothing on shadows, which is really nice. Also, what happened to this guy? I feel like he's having a rough go. Oh, is he inside? Oh, he just doesn't have a head or a front of his body. Well, okay. That's rough for him. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. Probably ended up being longer than I thought, but, a little bit of technical explanation. I always like to go into Smithbox/DS Map Studio and kind of show the behind the scenes of how you do that. And I think most people are surprised that it's pretty easy. Actually, yeah, check this out. So this little spotlight here is shadow casting by default. I don't believe I changed that. So it's that little spotlight blue one that kind of goes over them. Yeah, there's some really cool things that I want to sort of do with point lights and spotlights in the game, but really tastefully, where they already exist, but they're not used on everything, and so I want to be careful about that. But thank you for watching. I think my next piece of content should be a Dark Souls 2 Bearer of the Curse stream, as I want to play more of that. and see more changes that Yozora made. And it's going to be cash money. Follow me on Twitter if you want sort of like when I say I'm live, or sometimes I'll say like I'm going live the next day or something. And obviously subscribe on YouTube. You can watch on Twitch, twitch.tv/FromSoftServe. It's in the description as well. You can go follow over there if you prefer to watch on Twitch, as I know some people do. Personally, I do. I watch streams on Twitch. I stream on Twitch because that's where all my people are. And so obviously my YouTube homies, that's where all the people are. But I know, as some of the YouTube homies, you may prefer Twitch. So you can go follow on Twitch, watch there. I multi-stream. And the VODs obviously are saved on YouTube. So it works pretty well for me. I don't have to like download my VOD or record it and then upload it again. It's just already on YouTube. So shout out to YouTube. And then obviously, yeah, I have links below for Patreon, Coffee. If you'd like to support the modding efforts that way, that would be, never needed, but appreciated if ever. And thank you for watching.